Awesome. Thank you, Karen, and welcome everybody. Thanks for coming along. The numbers here really indicate that scanning continues to be the forefront of most people's challenges when it comes to getting documents up into their document management system, and no more so than when you're dealing with a cloud document management system. In this webinar, as Karen had discussed, we'll be focusing on NetDocuments as basically the leading cloud DMS provider in the world. We're going to be looking at all the types of solutions that we at Affinity see as we work through our NetDocuments clients and try and leverage the existing hardware and infrastructures that our clients have to get their scanned images up into the NetDocuments document management system. From this webinar, we hope you'll come away with an understanding of the decentralized processes that are available for you. Now more than ever, that's really important. We are in a new era now where we have a majority of users working in remote locations, most of us working from our homes, and that presents even more challenges when it comes to imaging. We're also going to be focusing on solutions that are achievable now. I tend not to provide a death by PowerPoint presentation. I'll be diving into real life demos using NetDocuments and various hardware systems and infrastructure that I have available. I'm like you, sitting at my home office right now, and so this should be fairly relevant to everybody that's looking for a solution in this area. We'll also be discussing some of the advanced imaging processes that are out there, third-party vendors, and give you a good idea of the types of solutions that you can reach to the sky with. There are some pretty amazing complex solutions out there that aren't just for AmLaw 200 type environments. There's trickle down in the technology that makes this applicable even for solos. And then lastly, I want to cap off and talk about how to sort of bring your imaging into a workflow process inside NetDocuments. It's one thing just to bang up PDF documents into a workspace, but how do you actually replicate the physical flow of paper? That's a big part of a firm moving into a paperless environment. So we'll spend a few minutes just touching on that. First up, what I'd like to do though is I'd like to present a poll for you all to give me some feedback about the scanning process that you guys are all adopting in your offices. Now, this is a bit blurry now because most of us are relocated, as I said, to home environments. But what I'd like to get an understanding is what's the traditional way that you are imaging the majority of your paper documents and getting them up into your document management system. So Karen has a poll up on the screen, I believe. And if you can just go in and click on that and just give an indication as to what your preferred method is. We are seeing some changes, obviously, over the last few weeks as to what the common method is, but this is just the overlying concept of how we're processing our image documents. And I see there's plenty of responses coming in here. In fact, actually, a little bit of an eye-opener here as well. So, Karen, do we have that poll up on the screen? I think Karen is just collating that information, and it looks like the poll results we get back here, we're showing that the majority of attendees on this webinar are scanning from their desktop scanners. So 55% of respondents are scanning from a desktop local scanner, while 45% are scanning from a multifunction centralized copier scanner printer type environment, which that's slated, that's changing. This time last year, we would have seen that somewhere around about 60 to 65% as central scanning. And I think this sort of reflects that decentralization of process. So let's talk about that process. We'll just go in and talk about the demographics of scanning. And as I indicated, there's really two types of demographics that we're interested in here. The first one being the centralized process, which is the traditional way where images are created from documents from a central copier or mailroom. And that might be your traditional central mailroom in your office. It might be a mailroom in each floor if you've got multiple offices. But we're talking about utilizing a a central hardware system, and the core of most law firms and corporate legal departments is typically your multifunction printer, copier, scanner that is purposed as a high-speed scanner. Some sites will have typically in very large environments, will have a dedicated mail room that has high-speed scanners installed specific for that purpose. And then the other option that we see out there is outsourced services using products like scan to mail and walls and outsourced vendors that will actually image your hard copy for you. So that's our traditional centralized. And then, of course, the next most common format is decentralized, where we're using our office desktop or work group scanning, where you might have a team of people working in an office with a local work group scanner that's available for anyone in that particular area of the office. And then now, what's become more important for us is the home office. How are we scanning for our home environment? And that really comes into talking about the road worry, that the attorney or professional that's always on the road, how are they getting their digital content back into their cloud DMS or NetDocuments? So basically, centralized and decentralized is really the dividing line into scanning demographics. So what I'd like to just talk about is, let's focus on that office or desktop scanning process that the majority of you are working with. So, the common environment there is we're using desktop scanners. I didn't want to go through and list all the desktop scanners because I'm sure that we would see a huge cross-section of vendors recognized in that. But Fujitsu is typically been an area, a vendor that is very prominent in the legal vertical. We see them at trade shows over and over. I'll say Canon as well, but Fujitsu have very much had their ears to the ground in terms of pain points and scanning process when it comes to office or desktop environments. And I listed them here by name just because they're such a common product that we see on the desktop. So I actually have exactly the same scanner that you see in the PowerPoint there, sitting right next to me, which is the ScanSnap IX500. Also allows for Wi-Fi or Bluetooth scanning. So there's plenty of options out there from other manufacturers, but we are seeing this gradual shift to using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth scanners so that you can scan directly to your phone, or you don't even have to have the scanner actually sitting on your own desk. It could be somewhere that's a remote in your environment. And then I did list in here the old-fashioned TWAIN scanners. Now, I say old-fashioned, and we're going to come back to this, but TWAIN scanners still have a place in our environment. And for those of you who are wondering what a TWAIN scanner is, there's a nice little picture of one that's a typical old-fashioned flatbed scanner that you might all remember having something like this. A TWAIN scanner is a scanner that you basically call from your computer. You tell your computer, one of the programs on your computer, please scan now, and that wakens the device, and then the device scans. Whereas the more common modern scanners are typically using hardware-based scanning, where on the Fujitsus or the Canons, you're just hitting a scan button and it scans what's inside the document feeder. So when we're leveraging our desktop scanners, how are we getting documents into NetDocuments? So I want to go through the 5 common processes that you should consider for remote or desktop scanning. The first one is using your PDF software. So basically the aim of the game, probably the most common process we see, is when you're scanning directly from your scanner into a PDF product. And the most common product of note we typically see is the free Adobe Acrobat Reader, which I just so happen to have on my screen here. And I'll just replicate this process for you. I'm just going to hit the scan button on my scanner, which actually has a document sitting in it right now. There's my little ScanSnap scanner finishing, and my document has now completed. And at this point, it will ask me, there it is, it's opened into Reader. That's all just happened from my my scanning machine. I haven't done anything more than hit the blue button on my Fujitsu ScanSnap, but that's what most of us are seeing. And then at this point, we want to hand off to ND Office. Now, ND Office being the desktop application integration agent that allows us to integrate with Adobe Acrobat in this case, or obviously more commonly you're probably using it with Word or Excel or Outlook. But once I'm using a scan into a Adobe Acrobat Reader, if I just hit File and Save As, at this point, when I choose my different location, NetDocs ND Office will open. And at this point, I can go in and choose the location that I wish to scan my particular document to. So I'll just go to my demonstration cabinet here, and I'll pick on this particular matter here, and I'm going to save my scanned image into the client info folder here, and click OK. That's a great process in terms of, if you count the number of mouse clicks, it was only 2 separate mouse clicks to get the trigger to save into ND Office, which is a pretty good process. And then the thing I like about that process is that the document is scanned directly to its end location in NetDocuments. So it is now sitting in my particular workspace. And if I was to cross over to that workspace and go into my correspondence folder or wherever it was I just saved, I will see that document sitting in here. So it doesn't need to be moved again. And that's an ideal process for mine. You might have recalled that Fujitsu, once upon a time, had a much better integration, which would actually allow you to save directly to NetDocuments. In other words, you hit the blue button on the Fujitsu ScanSnap, it opened directly to NetDocuments, and then you would profile it. So that was basically a 0-click process. Unfortunately, the integration API changes with NetDocuments means that application no longer works. It actually piggybacks off Internet Explorer and ActiveX, and that's no longer a supported product. So that's the best you can get with a Fujitsu ScanSnap at the moment. However, Fujitsu have told us that they will be revisiting that API in the coming future. So hopefully there'll be some development on that end. Now, I've given you demonstrations of scanning to Adobe Acrobat there, but you should note that there are alternatives out there that are just as good, if not better, as a solution than Acrobat as your endpoint for a scanned document. So I have on my computer here, I have a product called PDF Docs, which is from DocsCore. It is an alternative to Adobe Acrobat. You've also got Foxit, Nuance, and I'm sure many of you use these products. The beauty of these products is they're cognizant of the DMS environment that legal professions are in. So you'll notice that PDF Docs has a save into DMS function, which you do not have in Adobe Acrobat. And when I click save into DMS, it knows I've got NetDocuments installed, and with one simple click, boom, there I'm straight into ND Office, and therefore saving my document. So, I feel like that is probably a step above your direct integration with Adobe Acrobat. If you have one of those alternative products, that is the way to go to use those as your scan destination. Revisiting back on our options there, of course, I did mention TWAIN scanners. So there's our old-fashioned TWAIN scanner. Why are they still relevant? Well, TWAIN scanners, believe it or not, are still around, and they do offer some ability for high-speed scanning as well. So you'll find some of the higher-end TWAIN scanners have large document chutes that can accommodate up to a couple of hundred pages, and they do have scan throughputs of in excess of 30 pages per minute. Which is the scan snaps are around about 25 to 30 pages per minute. TWAINs and ISIS drivers could actually be higher than that. So I wanted to just stop and talk about that for a moment. Why are TWAIN scanners important? If you happen to have a TWAIN scanner, you can leverage the built-in scanning function inside the NetDocuments UI. So you all see in NetDocuments, you're all familiar with the add button here. You'll see that there is a function here called scanned image. And when you click scanned image, what that will do is it will launch the NetDocs, old-fashioned, hasn't changed in many years, TWAIN scanner interface. So just open this little window here. And if I hit scan now, now I don't have a TWAIN scanner attached, but if I did, it would list on the screen there, and it would basically open and call the scanner into operation. And the very next screen I would see would be NetDocuments asking me whereabouts I wish to save that scanned image. So we're down to a one-click solution again. So that's applicable if you've got a TWAIN scanner. And I'm going to come back and visit a little bit more about TWAIN scanners when we get to centralized. The next option that we have out here is one that a lot of people don't consider, and that is using ND Sync. ND Sync is the desktop synchronization agent that you can deploy for NetDocuments, and you can actually sync a location in NetDocuments with your local workstation. So I could pick a folder. Let's say I had and we all should see a cabinet inbox underneath our various workspace-driven cabinets in NetDocuments. I could pick my cabinet inbox. In fact, in my system, we've actually set up subfolders for our cabinet inboxes, and I can actually sync this folder with ND Sync. So that's just clicking the folder sync function, and that means that on my local desktop now, when I've got the sync agent installed, I'll have a folder called cabinet inbox /Greg, and if I point any scanner to that location, it will basically sync that location locally up with NetDocuments, and you would see the document sitting inside that folder. So there you see my scanned image, and I've scanned that locally, and now that's been synced up to NetDocuments. In fact, from here, I do have to move it. So it is not the best solution because I do have to then move it to its final destination. But if I click on that folder, I can just simply drag and drop from my scanned image of my cabinet inbox folder. So a lot of people don't know that you can drag and drop on the nav pane on the left-hand side to folders. So that was a pretty simple process, and it is just using the ND Sync module. If you don't have the ND Sync module turned on or enabled, you will need to contact your NetDoc sales rep or your partner, and they will facilitate that for you. It's a pretty simple program. We basically instruct people to use it all the time. And then lastly, the solution that I think is one of the most elegant, but is the one that is most commonly misunderstood or not used, is the NetDocs email address that we see for a container. So let me give you an example of that. Here is my inbox, cabinet inbox folder here. And if you look at any container, any folder or filter or workspace, if you come down to the options, you'll see a view email address button. And when you click that, it will open up a little dialog here that tells you what the email address for that container. And what you want to do is you want to come down to this little section of the message where it has the email address, which is really just the doc ID of the object, but it has NM in there, so the letters NM. Because that's part of the email address here, if I was to email any scanned image now, and let me just open up a new mail item here and just show you that process. So here's my new email, and I'm just going to pop that email address in there, and there's a scanned image. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to email to that container, and I'll just pick a scanned image. Let's say that this is something you call directly from your local scanner, right? And I hit send. It is going to email that message, that attachment directly into that container. This CleanDocs is just my meta cleaning software, which is always good to have. I'm just going to make sure it goes through my meta cleaner. And now it has sent that scanned image. And within seconds, that image will show up inside this container. In fact, if I just refresh that window there, and we might have to wait up to 30 seconds or so for it to show up. That item is going to show in there. So every container in NetDocuments has that email address, again, accessed under the view email address function. Okay, let's continue on here with our options. We'll go to talk about home scanning. You know, we talked about the desktop scanning, which is, you know, it's something that's traditional in the office, but a lot of this applies for home now. But I wanted to also bring in some additional ideas of scanning from home. It's the, you know, the new normal, as we say now. What if you don't have a scanner at home? How do I get around this? So I found this nice little image here, which I think is pretty funny, but pretty much improvising, which is the idea of taking perhaps a phone and constructing, in this case, Lego, technical Lego, a little scanner, which is basically you set your document down and you take a nice photograph. Obviously, most of us are probably just using our phones to take a photo of the document, but once the document has been photographed, you can then go ahead and send that via email into one of those containers, or you can send it obviously as an email attachment and use ND Office to file that email attachment. So obviously scanning from home, the probably primary focus would be using a desktop scanner that you've managed to get from the office. But if you're no longer able to get into your office to get that stuff, perhaps you should consider using your smartphone or your tablet. But you know, the smartphone gives you that ability to take that photo. I wanted to point out there that there is additional applications available. The one I use is a product called Tiny Scanner. It's just a free application that instead of taking photos or JPEG files, it is taking PDFs and it saves them on the device. And then from there, I can email them into a container in NetDocuments, or I could just email them as attachments, save them later, or I could leverage the NetDocs mobile application. So, you know, I have an iPhone and an iPad. I'm using the NetDocs iOS mobile application. Yeah, it's included with NetDocs, should be using it. And you've got the ability there to upload local images. So they could be photos, or in this case, they could be the PDF document that's created by my Tiny Scanner app. And there are plenty out there. Go to the App Store and search for scanning PDF or something like that, and you'll find a bunch of options out there. So scanning from home, it's the new normal. There's challenges out there, but it really follows a lot of the process that we see when we're working with our desktop or old-fashioned traditional office environment. So that's the kind of a decentralized process. Let's focus for a moment on centralized scanning, which is those traditional scanning processes that we would see at a lot of sites. And first, I wanted just to touch on an option here that we see for environments where you're using a hosted environment, right? So you've got a hosted application environment. You've got a provider that's basically deploying to your desktop in your remote office via Citrix or Microsoft Remote Desktop Services. Might be virtual machines, another one as well. Because we do see a lot of this. I think here at Affinity, we see around about 10% to 15% of our NetDocuments implementations work inside a hosted service, and they do present challenges. You know, how do you access your local desktop, because you're usually working inside a thin client version of your desktop. And the challenge there has been usually met with the creation of a transfer folder. That's something your IT team will put on your local, might be your home machine, for instance, a local folder. It's usually on your desktop, and you can drag and drop documents to it, and then those documents will show up in the File Explorer in your hosted environment. The other option is to point your scanner directly to that transfer folder. And then once you've scanned something, then open up your hosted service desktop, and then you can drag and drop or add the document directly into the NetDocs UI. The other option, of course, is to go back to using that ND Sync account. You know, remember I said that you could install the ND Sync desktop client and sync any container to your local environment and use that as a mechanism for scanning up into the NetDocuments cloud. So the third option, which is probably not so common right now, is go back to using a centralized solution, you know, batch scanning or a centralized printer. Not much good to you right now, though, if you're working from home. So let's talk a little bit about that that centralized scanning that we see so much. You know, when I scan from my office, I'm typically using one of these. You know, your big MFP with a little control panel on the side of it, and you might have a cost recovery system that was part of that. Many of you, I'm probably making you reminisce about the days when you're in your office and you saw this machine. So hopefully you're not missing it too much. But that simple MFP gives us the ability to point a scanned document into an address book location. So you guys all pretty much remember this. When you go to your MFP, you click the scan button and scan whatever it is, and then you tell it which address book you wish to go to, or whereabouts you want the document to go. So those address books can be set up with what we call an SMTP service, which allows you to email directly into a container. As we saw, you know, that's using that email address that's associated with any container inside NetDocuments. So in the example you saw in my NetDocuments system, under our cabinet inbox, I'd created a folder here for each one of my team members, And each one of these folders, of course, has that email address. Remember I said that was the email address with this NM value, okay? And from here, what I get is my copier person or my IT person codes the button for Greg in the MFP address book to email to that address. Voila, easy. I scan at the MFP. By the time I get back to my desk, the scanned image is sitting inside my my folder, and I can then simply just go ahead and drag and drop it into whichever workspace I want to go. So there's the item, and then I go and drag and drop it across into my client workspace. So that is what I think is the most the superior solution for MFPs. It's not something we see people using very much. Most people are typically using a scan where it just scans to my email address, and then I have to go back to my my desk, and then I take the attachment on my email, and I basically save it into NetDocuments using the ND Office integration with Outlook. That's what most people do. I feel there's a better way to do that though. The other options you can look at with MFPs are exploring the vendor APIs and solutions that are available from the copier companies. So Ricoh and Canon both have integration agents that work directly with NetDocuments. And I wanted to also point out there's a German firm out there by the name of DocuConcept that actually installs a piece that runs on most of the main copier vendors, runs on their little touchpads on their screens that allows you to basically interface directly with NetDocuments, put in a client number, a matter number, even type in the document name and a document type and hit send, and it will send it across into the NetDocuments UI. And then lastly, I wanted to just point out that there is the option of using a cost recovery module. So if you're using CopyTrack or EchoTrack, talk to your cost recovery vendor and see if they have an integration piece that they can sell you that will allow you to leverage the fact that you're already putting in the client matter number when you're printing or scanning something. How about also sending that that scanned image into the NetDocuments workspace for that same client matter number? I did say we were going to revisit some of some of the more obtuse or high-end solutions, just because I wanted everyone to understand the options that are out there. You can use existing partner solutions by DocSolid, which allows you to put a little QR code sticker on the top of a document, scan it through your MFP or your local scanner, and magically that document will show up in a container inside NetDocuments, whether it's a matter or a workspace or a folder. So those QR code stickers are actually linked to objects within your NetDocuments environment. Upland AccuRoute also works with NetDocuments, is a solution that leverages the cover sheets that are available for all containers. So again, coming back to my folder here, you'll notice that there is a print cover sheet function with every object inside NetDocuments. When you print a cover sheet, it basically creates this nice little barcoded cover sheet. You see it there, a little 3 of 9 barcode, and you can actually customize your cover sheets, by the way. So I've customized mine there. And I've created that cover sheet for this Greg folder. And what would happen with Upland AccuRoute is I would put that cover sheet on the top of whatever I want to scan and scan it through my MFP, and voila, by the time I get back to my desk, the document is sitting in that location as well. So you could have cover sheets that represent all your main matters, and you'll notice that the cover sheets, as I said, can be customized, so they can include the client names and the matter numbers and the matter names and what have you, right? So that's fairly clever with Upland AccuRoute. They're leveraging an existing system that's already within NetDocs. The other option is NQ InfoRoute from NQ. This is a solution that, again, sort of works off the workflow module that's attached to your copier. So they're existing off-the-shelf solutions that can be leveraged in your environment for large-scale scanning. The other thing that I mentioned is the ability to build your own solution, which is what we call bespoke solutions. And I want to give you an example because, Affinity here, we do quite a bit of this. So over time, we've developed bespoke solutions that will read, for instance, the first page of anything that's scanned and look for a case number or a matter number. Or we could be looking for a doc ID you know, in NetDocuments and ND Office, you can insert a doc ID in the footer of your documents. We can actually read that doc ID and understand that that document, if it's scanned, needs to go back to the relevant case or the relevant matter. We can even scan it and save it as a new version of the existing Word document. And that's called zonal OCRing. That's, you know, again, a bespoke solution. It again is relevant for firms that I think have high volume imaging requirements. So you're dealing with 300, 500, 1,000 documents per day. You need to automate them. Those systems also have REST API calls into NetDocuments, so they can look up and check to see that the case number that's perhaps at the top of a pleading or something matches something within the NetDocuments database or your CRM, and determine which matter it is in NetDocuments and file it accordingly. So I've got a couple of the applications that are used at the back end of that is Kofax and Simple Index. You know, we'll give out the deck here that has all the information related to those products, and you know, if you need us to explore further with you, we certainly can. And then lastly, I want to come back and talk about that TWAIN scanner, the old-fashioned TWAIN scanner. Why is that still relevant? Well, I mean, a lot of people still use TWAIN scanners for work group scanning. And remember, we talked about this idea of creating a cover sheet. So that was just any container, you know, hitting this print cover sheet function. If you still have a TWAIN scanner, you can basically bundle a bunch of documents together with these cover sheets and scan them as a batch. You know, a batch in scanning terms just means multiple documents at once. So I could have 5 cover sheets sitting on top of 5 separate documents, and it would basically scan them in as 5 separate documents into NetDocuments all at once. So that's really good with, you know, again, I said these TWAIN scanners have some really large automatic document feeder traders, so you might load 200, 300, 400 documents in at once and put cover sheets between them and scan them into the system. So that's just leveraging the existing functionality inside NetDocuments. No discussion about scanning would be complete without talking about back scanning. It's always a discussion point when we do implementations that involve digitization of record. How do we deal with all the archives or the banker boxes that are sitting out in our offsite storage? Well, some of you probably already know this, but the average price for a scanned banker's box of documents is $125. And that's typically used, you know, denoted as being mixed litigation. So different sized documents with staples that have to be removed and the odd thing unfolded. So around about $125 per banker's box. Now you sort of sum that up, like how long would that take in terms of man hours for me to have one of my staff do that? And you make that judgment call. Is it better for us to scan those old documents by one of our outsourced vendors? You know, talk to your copier or scanner guy about that, or Iron Mountain, or whoever your vendor is for offsite storage. They could give you guidance on that. What they can do is they can scan those documents and they can apply metadata to those documents that would allow us to have a CSV file that could then be imported into NetDocuments. So each one of those scanned documents could have a name, and that name could be something that we just find in the top, inch or so of the document, a date that it finds somewhere in the document, again using zonal OCR technology, and allow us to do a mass import into NetDocuments to get all that old data in digital form. The other option, of course, is to do it all in-house. Using one of the batch scanning solutions that I just talked about a couple of pages ago, you could leverage one of those to deal with your old or your records that are sitting off-site, bring them in-house and store them. Also consider hiring part-time or summer staff to assist with that process. That's a tried and true method of keeping the cost down on that. And then the last option here, I was going to say, is leveraging your records management system. If you guys are using FileTrail or iComply or one of the integrated record management systems with NetDocuments, those systems typically have a call-out function where you can ask for documents to be digitized and sent to you, and then you could then save them into NetDocuments. You'd obviously have to have a record storage vendor that is also part of your records management system, but FileTrail and iComply both offer that service. And then to finalize the entire webinar here, I wanted just to go over a couple of good tips in dealing with scanned images in NetDocuments. The first up You know, one of the big parts of being paperless and scanning everything is replacing this guy. Remember this guy? This is the mail cart, and we're all probably looking at this somewhat fondly and reminiscing about the days when we saw the mail cart come past our desk. But how the mail cart instigated workflow. You know, it put documents on your desk that needed to be worked with. If we digitize a document, how do we know we need to work with that document? So one of the key things you can do just to help organizing scanned images is leveraging saved searches inside NetDocuments. So a saved search would allow me, for instance, in my my Elmer Fudd workspace here, I could create a saved search. I've got one here that just shows me all the scanned images for this particular case, right? With one click of a button, I see everything that's been scanned. And that allows me to still organize all my documents into their various filters, but be able to see all my scanned images all in one view as well. So that is one tip I'll give you. The second one would be consider using a mailbox folder to replace your mail cart, right? And then using saved searches to distribute that information. So you remember I was showing you how I was scanning into these folders over here on the left-hand side, which is my cabinet inbox. And I scanned everything that was addressed to Greg, to Greg's folder, and everything addressed to Bryce's folder, and Kevin and Ted and Vanessa. So we're basically putting our scanned images into pigeonholes, but then we're asking those people to go out and file them, move them. You know, the scanned images shouldn't just be sitting in those folders. Those folders should be empty at all times, or as much as possible. That's us moving our documents to the cases or locations in NetDocuments they should be filed in. So I would ask that if you're going to follow that process, to back it up with a concept of alerting people to the fact that they have mail that needs to be filed. How to do that? Again, this is all about leveraging what you already own. Under my folder here, I can create a follow, and that follow I can set, and I've already set one here, and we do that in our office here, where it alerts, in this case, me, there's my email address. Anytime anyone adds something new to this location, I will get an email with a link to that document, and that alerts me that I've got new mail. And then from there, I can just simply drag and drop my mail or right-click move, whatever I need to do to get it to the right case. And that confirms that I'm actually reading my mail. So a nice little workflow, leveraging the existing process inside NetDocuments. And then lastly, I'll leave you with the tip that whenever you scan anything, your end goal should be to leverage the content. Remember, one of the most capable parts of NetDocuments is its enterprise level search ability. Its ability to give you that functionality of searching on content, on text within any scanned image. And you need to make sure that you've got a back-end OCR engine. I would not want you to OCR each document before you save it into NetDocuments. That becomes tedious the larger the document is. Instead, leverage NDOCR. It's dollars per month per user. It is a back-end set and forget process that just mines through all your NetDocuments documents that have been added, and anything that is not searchable in the PDF that's not searchable, it applies a OCR layer to it and adds it to the your enterprise search engine. So there are 3 great tips you should go with scanning and imaging into the NetDocuments cloud. So with that, I'll turn back over to Karen.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Great information. Thanks so much for spending time with us. Great job. And thanks to all of you for attending. If you were intrigued by Greg's presentation this afternoon and want to learn more about imaging options or any other document management questions, I encourage you to take advantage of our free 30-minute DMS consultation. This is your chance to speak with one of the DMS experts at Affinity and get those nagging questions answered, or even a demo of NetDocuments. Just reply to the follow-up email I'm about to send, and I'll do the rest. We have more DMS-focused sessions coming soon. Learn all about Symphony Profiler on April 30th, and in May, we continue our DMS series by exploring how to integrate your DMS with PDF software. And I'm really excited to announce that we are teaming up with NetDocuments on May 7th for a session called How COVID-19 is Shifting the Legal Culture. Should be a really, really great session. You can find all the information by jumping onto affinityconsulting.com/webinars, and please do share your feedback with us on the survey that follows. Join us again soon, everyone.